Good afternoon or good evening, depending on where you might be. My name is Kevin Michael Grace, and this is the KMG Show for Monday, November the 9th, 2020. So is Joe Biden the president-elect of the United States? Well, Justin Trudeau certainly thinks so, and Boris Johnson certainly thinks so. Other world leaders are being more cautious. But the media has gone all in on President Joe Biden. It's a time for healing, apparently. That's what some people are saying, but we're hearing other reports of Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It's going to be all over for the Trumps, and I'll get to that shortly. Looking at Drudge, let's see, Fox News cuts off Kayleigh McEnany presser with scathing smackdown. Can't in good countenance continue showing this. You wouldn't get the impression looking at Drudge that President Trump has not conceded to Joe Biden and is fighting what he alleges to have been a fixed election. But again, I suppose if you just say President Biden long enough, then people will come to believe it. Whether the 70 million people who voted for Donald Trump will believe it is another matter entirely. It's from the Gateway Pundit. Fox News has cut away from a press conference held by White House Press Secretary Kayleigh McEnany, claiming the network cannot continue to air her false claims in good conscience. Cassandra Fairbanks says the media is blatantly trying to rig the election by trying to hide information from voters. Ashley Parker tweeted, Fox News just cut away from press secretary saying the network could not in good conscience continue to air her false claims for which she has provided no supporting evidence. Yes. Do they? What would they consider to be sufficient evidence? A picture of Joe Biden holding a big satchel that's marked phony votes on it. Would that go far enough for them? I have to say that it's getting difficult to find this information because Twitter doesn't want to let you find it. They don't like a lot of tweets. They're not letting you like them. They're not letting you retweet them. There's a piece from yesterday by Kit Knightley in the Off Guardian, and when I went to this site earlier, I was warned that it could be dangerous to my computer. How exactly dangerous? I don't know. Perhaps the computer will rebel against the disinformation. And so at the Off Guardian, Kit Knightley writes, the media have called the election for Biden, but the counting goes on and there is a legal case in the offing. But whoever emerges from this deluge of sludge, fraud, and propaganda to become president of the United States, there has undoubtedly already been one big loser: freedom of speech. Late on Tuesday night, early Wednesday morning, Donald Trump, the elected president of the United States, emerged from the White House to make a speech. He accused the Democratic Party, the political establishment, the media, and tech giants, social media companies of working together to steal the election and put Biden in the White House. You likely didn't see all of it because most of the mainstream news channels simply refused to broadcast it. Earlier that night, MSNBC had cut away from Trump's first speech claiming victory, with anchor Brian Williams claiming that it was not rooted in reality and dangerous. Social media companies were doing the same thing. Within hours of it being set up, Facebook deleted a group protesting the election result, while Twitter reduced the president's timeline to tweet after tweet after tweet, labeled some or all of the content shared in this tweet is disputed and might be misleading about an election or other civic process. Learn more. This isn't about defending Donald Trump or even agreeing that the election was rigged, although there was plenty of evidence to suspect as well. This is about a principle. Donald Trump is the elected head of state, and he is being denied a platform to address the people he represents. by the faceless servants of corporate media oligarchs. This is a terrible, terrifying, awful precedent to set. The owners of Comcast or Warner Brothers or Disney or Facebook or Twitter are not elected officials. They have no legal authority and thus no accountability. Yet they are claiming the right to determine what elected officials can and cannot say to the people who elected them. There is a strain of thought that this kind of censorship is justified. Spreading disinformation puts lives at risk, they say. If the media stopped people lying, we wouldn't be in this mess, or the news should only broadcast the truth. The argument goes that allowing Donald Trump to publicly undermine our democratic institutions will erode the public trust and could lead to violence. But I would argue that empowering billionaires to hold a monopoly on the truth is far more dangerous to democracy than anything Trump could ever say. To people inclined to disagree, I leave these 5 questions. Answer them if you can. 1, who made the decision to censor the elected president of the United States? 2, who granted them this power? 3, whose interests do they serve? 4, to whom are they accountable? And 5, in the future, who gets to decide the truth? Well, the media has decided that they get to decide what the truth is here. I'll just take a look at what's going on at Breitbart. Just remarkable stuff. Mika Brzezinski, co-host of Morning Joe, said today it would be traitorous of the GOP to fight the election results. Traitorous. So I don't know. Trump has been called a traitor since 2015. Meanwhile, the various coup attempts by the Democrats and the media, somehow they are not traitorous. Host Joe Scarborough said it was a dangerous path to contest the results. He added, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell knows this election's over, and that is why he's focusing on the Georgia Senate runoffs, which Scarborough said the GOP should win unless Republicans really foul things up with fighting the results. Oh, they're offering Trump a deal? They're offering the Republicans a deal that if Trump stops contesting the election and leaves the White House, then they won't steal the 2 seats in Georgia? Is that the deal? Perhaps? Because I would not trust in that deal. People are talking about the 1876 presidential election, which remained contested. Eventually, a compromise was reached where the Republican was allowed to win the election and become president, Rutherford B. Hayes, with the promise that the party would remove troops from the defeated South, thus ending Reconstruction. And that is precisely what happened. This is from the Conservative Brief today. Martin Walsh, the Nevada Republican Party, has sent a criminal referral to the Department of Justice and Attorney General William Barr, claiming to have found thousands of examples of voter fraud. According to a report from the Daily Wire, the Nevada Republican Party released a confirmation revealing that it's officially had lawyers send a special request to Barr regarding at least 3,062 instances of voter fraud. Our lawyers just sent a criminal referral to Attorney General Barr regarding these incidents of voter fraud. We expect that number to grow substantially. Thousands of individuals have been identified who appear to have violated the law by casting ballots after they moved from New Brunswick. After they moved from Nevada, not New Brunswick. I don't know how that got in there. What are the Democrats up to? Well, it's projection. It's always projection with them. And what they are accusing Trump and the Republicans of doing is obviously what they are doing themselves. I came across this interesting tweet here from Adam Parcomento, who is self-described as Democratic strategist, consultant, political advisor, dad, Ukrainian American. He wrote, on Twitter. So between Barr, McConnell, Esper today, tell me why I shouldn't think this is a coup. That's a pretty strong word there, but for some reason there's no warning from Twitter. He provides no evidence for this wild claim, but I guess he's on the right side of the political divide, so he is not going to be censored by Twitter. The Attorney General, William Barr, met with the Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell. What they discussed is unknown, but we know that that Mitch McConnell is not throwing in the towel. A piece from Alexander Macris at his Substack. How might election fraud get litigated? Tomorrow, the Trump campaign will be filing lawsuits around the country alleging election fraud in the disputed 2020 election. Media pundits on both sides are quick to offer up their side's preferred propaganda as to how this will play out. But what does the law actually say on this issue? In 1976, Jimmy Carter defeated Gerald Ford in a narrow election that hinged in part on the Electoral College votes of New York. In the aftermath of the election, voters who supported Ford filed a lawsuit in federal district court alleging election fraud and asked the court to order a new election. I've selected this case, Macris writes, for a deep dive for several reasons. First, it's one of the only federal court cases I could find to rule on the matter in living memory. The other is the famous Bush versus Gore, but that case has been analyzed deeply by experts already and had a quite different fact pattern from the likely Trump lawsuits. Second, the allegations made by the Donahue plaintiffs are quite relevant to the affairs of 2020. Of course, we know what happened in Donahue. Spoiler alert, Ford lost and Carter got elected president. But will Trump lose? Let's really take a close look at some interesting points. Question 1, can a lawsuit even be filed against state or municipal agencies, or are the agencies immune from suit under 42 U.S.C. 1983? The court answered yes, a suit can be filed. Question 2, has an individual's right to vote been violated under the 14th Amendment if they got to cast their ballot, but the ballot was later changed, debased, or diluted by fraud? The Supreme Court answered yes. So far, so good for the Trump campaign. Question 3, what sort of election irregularity gives rise to the equal protection claim? Here, the Donahue court gives a long and detailed answer. The Donahue court has thus laid out the legal test that the plaintiff must meet. He must plead and prove 1, specific acts of misconduct, 2, involving willful or knowing ballot fraud, 3, by state officials or private persons acting jointly with state officials, 4, that changed the outcome of the election. This is a heavy burden. The Trump campaign will have to work hard to meet this test, but it is a matter of fact and evidence. Question 4, if the plaintiff does prove its case, can the court actually order a new presidential election? The Donahue court says, surprise, yes. This is incredibly important. Oh, here's a tweet from Kyle Becker. And at the top, it says, some or all of the content shared in this tweet is disputed and might be misleading about an election or other civic process. Again, as I pointed out previously, there's hardly anything that's on Twitter that could not be disputed. Kyle Becker writes, the election software and system in Michigan that switched 6,000 votes from Trump to Biden is called Dominion. It is used in 30 states, including Nevada, Arizona, Minnesota, Michigan, Wisconsin, Georgia, Pennsylvania, every single major swing state, every single one. And this Dominion system has some interesting investors and connections to the Clinton Foundation. I don't think that that should really surprise anyone. It doesn't surprise me. But of course, as many people have been saying for the last 2 days, the Democrats and the media insisted for 4 years, and they're still insisting now, that Trump, acting as the puppet of Vladimir Putin, stole the 2016 presidential election. Now, these very same people are telling us, what, election fraud? That's impossible. That can't happen in the United States. Of course, there was a very famous example from 1982 when Senator Adlai Stevenson's campaign tried to steal the gubernatorial race. He was running against the incumbent, Big Jim Thompson, and he came within a 0.14% of winning. It was later determined that approximately 100,000 fraudulent votes were cast in Chicago, and that was 10% of the total in the city. And 63 people were imprisoned because of that. Politico has a hilarious story here. Georgia election official machine glitch caused by last-minute vendor upload. Voting was delayed in 2 counties for 2 hours while the problem was fixed. A technology glitch that halted voting in 2 Georgia counties on Tuesday morning was caused by a vendor uploading an update to their election machines the night before, a county election supervisor said. Voters were unable to cast machine ballots for a couple of hours in Morgan and Spalding County after the electronic devices crashed. In response to the delay, Superior Court Judge W. Fletcher Sams extended voting until 11 p.m. The counties used voting machines made by Dominion Voting Systems and electronic poll books used to sign in voters made by No Ink. The companies, quote, uploaded something last night which is not normal and it caused a glitch, unquote, said Marcia Ridley, election supervisor at Spalding County Board of Election. That glitch prevented poll workers from using the poll books to program smart cards that the voters insert into the voting machine. That is something that they don't ever do. I've never seen them update anything the day before an election, Ridley said. She added that she did not know what the upload contained. Oh, yes. The cover, the New York Times cover for what? Yesterday is they've got Joe Biden. Yeah, Joe Biden, you know, that charismatic campaigner, in a mock-up of the famous painting by Caspar David Friedrich of The Wanderer. And yeah, that's exactly how Americans look at Joe Biden. He was supposed to give, a speech? Was it Friday night? Didn't show up. 3 hours after he was supposed to be there, they just played a videotape and pretended that he was speaking. I believe it was yesterday. He was talking about how his election could give comfort from the 230 million Americans who had died of COVID-19. From the Hill, Alexander Bolton, Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, in a lengthy floor statement Monday, declined to congratulate Joe Biden and recognize him as the president-elect, and instead defended President Trump's legal fight against ballot counts, showing him behind in key states. Quote, obviously, no states have yet certified their election results. We have at least 1 or 2 states that are already on track for a recount, and I believe the president may have legal challenges underway in at least 5 states, McConnell said. Do you remember that in the weeks leading up to the November 3rd election, we were told by experts whose expertise was not disputed by Twitter or Facebook, oh no, that the election results are never known the night of the election, which is a bald-faced lie, because as I demonstrated last week, in most of the cases from 1948 onwards, yes, the winner of the election was known by midnight Pacific time on election night. And in all but 2000, the winner was known the next morning or afternoon with a concession by the loser. No, but see, these experts were telling us that it takes weeks, perhaps even longer, to count the votes. Well, I guess they're going to be held to that, aren't they? I suppose they can pretend that they never said this, but it's easy to find plenty of evidence to the contrary. Looking at the front page of Breitbart here, Chip Roy calls for recount, audit, and full review. Fewer than 100,000 votes separate key swing states. Ex-Michigan Department Attorney General alleges Detroit counters assigned fraudulent ballots to non-voters. Senator Lindsey Graham to urge McConnell to probe mail-in voting. Georgia election official dismisses rumors of widespread fraud. Purdue Loeffler call on Georgia Secretary of State to resign. Yeah. So what's the reaction from Canada been, as if anyone cares? This is from Susan Delacourt in the Toronto Star. She's one of the most prominent members of the Canadian media. It's been around forever. Donald Trump lost, but Trumpism is still thriving. Could it take hold in Canada too? No, it can't, because right-wing views are not allowed in the Canadian media. To give one example, they're not allowed on television, in the newspapers. There is nothing like Breitbart or Conservative Treehouse or any of these sites in Canada. If they existed, they would be shut down. I hold no brief for Ezra Levant, but it was rather remarkable. Was it 2 years ago that the media decided to unperson him? And in the space of about a week, they succeeded. And they began playing the consanguinity game, where anyone associated with Breitbart with Rebel Media in any way, those people are in very serious trouble. The point of this essay by Susan Delacourt seems to be what freedom of speech still exists in Canada must be eliminated. Alan Rock, former senior minister in Jean Chrétien's government, who also served as Canada's UN ambassador, has been urging that the country keep up its guard against the spread of Trumpism. He spoke about some of those concerns on CBC's Radio The Current last week and afterwards obliged me with some further thoughts. Rock says he's been troubled for a while about what dark forces Trump seems to have unleashed, not just in the US, but in Canada too. I think the most damaging aspect of his awful tenure has been the voice he has given to white supremacy and racism generally, Rock said. He points to what he cites as the dramatic uptick in hate-motivated crimes in this country, up 47% after Trump came to power. Although the numbers went down in 2018, they remain higher than before Trump took office. They were on a downward trend, 2014 to 2016, Rock notes. Beyond those stats, one can cite the general coarsening of the language used in public debate, the frightening aggressiveness on social media, and the steep rise in the number and activity of extreme right-wing groups in Canada, all evidence of lowered civility, more confrontational behavior, and the increasing boldness of the hate mongers. Extreme right-wing groups in Canada. Do any of these groups have more than 20 members? Say, I don't know what Alan Rock would consider to be extreme right wing. Oh, I don't know, anyone to the right of the Liberal Party, I suppose. But I remember Dennis Dale noting when Obama was in power that the Democrats have decided, or the left has decided, the elite has decided, it's not simply enough to win, that they must shoot the wounded. And we're getting a lot of hints that that is what is going to happen in the United States if Joe Biden prevails. Some great stuff at the American Thinker by Jay Valentine. Before I get into that, let's take a look at the chat, what's going on there. The Crime of the Century Boy says, yo, mama. Jogokin 666, catching up on Freaky Friday book report led me to some conclusions. Justin Proto, I can envision a few scenarios. One, false flag attempt on Biden by a far-right ideology allowing for Trump supporters and gun owners being shipped to gulags. Anran, a picture of Joe Biden holding a satchel of fake votes and standing next to Vladimir Putin. That would count. Head McNeck says, I think we've come to an inflection point where we need to do some serious soul searching. Do we choose to remain honorable and fair, or do we decide we're not going to accept this new paradigm? Is there anywhere to watch KMG other than YouTube? No. not for the time being. I really should make some changes in this broadcast to make it more tech savvy. But in my defense, I have lived in 6 different places this year. Justin Proto, another scenario was that Trump allowed this for Kenya-like, and evisceration. Plywoods is still on the liquor stores in Manhattan, reports Glib Medley. It ain't over till the plywood comes down. Trust the plywood, says our valiant moderator, Chad Chadson. Yeah, Bumbling American, called himself Bumbling American. He wrote after 2016 that it was obvious that the results had shown that a great many Americans seem to be seriously mentally unbalanced. Of course, what they're celebrating in New York City, and apparently COVID-19 is over now, that it was all Trump's doing, and now that Biden is the president-elect, anointed by the media, then we don't need to worry about masks and social distancing anymore. Joel Gerke says, even if Trump's legal position on the elections was without merit, his tweets and speeches indicating his views and intention regarding the election were core value political speech. William Hicks says, read an interesting story on Zero Hedge. A data scientist seems to have found clear evidence of fraud ballot stuffing. Guess we're going to see how the Democrats and media really feel about science. Jim Bowden says KMG, is U.S. politics no longer right versus left or Christian versus atheist, but it's become Jew versus Gentile? What do you think? Michael Beschloss, who I gather is a kind of big deal court historian in the United States, he tweeted that the defeat of Donald Trump meant that there were going to be no more anti-Semites in the West Wing. And I challenged him, for a specific list of anti-Semites in the West Wing. Of course, Trump's daughter Ivanka converted to Judaism to marry her husband, and they've both been working on Trump's behalf. Trump, it would seem, is beloved in Israel, not least because he recognized Jerusalem as the capital, but just this gaslighting just never stops. It never stops. That supposedly Trump, the Republicans, they are anti-Semites. And of course, it's a barefaced lie. Alex DeLarge says Clinton got 32% in South Dakota. Biden got 36%. 35% for Clinton and 37% for Biden in Tennessee, 38% for Clinton in Missouri, and 41% for Biden. And you see, it's just because Joe Biden was such a dynamic campaigner with a powerful message that apparently America liked hearing. For instance, that he wasn't going to lock down the country, he was going to lock down the virus. Well, how? Like shaking his fist? Calling him a dog-faced pony soldier and inviting him out back for some fisticuffs? Alex DeLarge again, Biden outperformed in the Rust Belt too, and incidentally, this was enough to put him over the top. Enron says, I wonder how many of those media creeps could pass lie detector tests on their thoughts on fraud in the election. Well, look, if your position is that Trump is literally Hitler, well, then it's the time machine question, right? Because if you had access to a time machine, you'd go back to 1889, and you'd kill Hitler, right? But so if Trump is literally Hitler, he's a fascist, he's a Nazi, then any means necessary would be justified in removing him, correct? And I noticed that they've been rather quiet about this aspect of it. Enron says, Kevin, that is completely believable. Old pudding head could get lost and find himself at the top of a mountain or hill like the one in the painting. Well, it's funny that Canada has been getting some praise after November the 3rd because we use paper ballots here, and the elections are known on election night and there is no cheating. Canadians are directed to specific polls where their names are on a register, and ID is required. I suppose there'll be screams that this is suppression of the black vote soon enough. Okay, let's see. That Sacha Baron Cohen really gets on my nerves. What he's calling Mark Zuckerberg an anti-Semite now, I believe. That, yes, he's saying that Zuckerberg must be dismissed. Too funny. Too funny. Okay. We like it more rough and tumble in the States, as you can see, says Salty Sage. Okay, let's go back to the subject of software glitches. Jay Valentine wrote yesterday in the American Thinker, I led the team that developed the fraud detection software for the largest online auction house in the world. Scammers sold products, did not deliver them to paid customers, then dropped off the site. The perp then changed every identifier, name, address, credit card, phone, literally every ID, and rejoined the site. Fraud detection software was blind because there was nothing in common between the bad guy and the newly listed same bad guy. Neural nets were useless. There were no patterns. This was a high-profile deal. It was front-page national news for months. The Secret Service, the FBI, and almost every fraud detection company was trying to solve it. They could not. We delivered a fraud technology that stopped auction fraud in its tracks. The auction site publicly stated such, noting it in its annual report. We know a little bit about fraud, cybersecurity, computer programming, and glitches. Software is really stupid stuff. It does not go off on its own, has no mind of its own, and there is no intelligence anywhere in code. It performs instructions and does them over and over, exactly the same every time, no matter what, until something changes. Something changing is not a glitch, it is a change. Software does not wake up in the morning and suddenly shift 6,000 votes from candidate A to candidate B, as in Biden. An electrical impulse hitting from that outdoor lightning strike does not make code do something different. It may fry a hard drive, but it does not change vote counts. Software leaves tracks. They are called log files. This is a little geeky, but software runs on an operating system. You have one on your phone, that thing that updates itself right in the middle of the phone call you need to take. Operating systems need to track everything they do, so they write automatically to a log file for everything that happens. The software vendor usually uses the log files to see what happened when something that was not expected did happen. Log files are really useful, and most serious applications use them. Log files are huge. They are really ugly. If you saw a log file, it would look like thousands of pages of random numbers and letters. It would mean nothing to you. To a system that reads log files, it would mean everything. Log file is the equivalent of having a social media post for every one of your eye blinks, heartbeats, finger movements, 24 hours a day. You get the picture. You can screw around with log files and modify them, but it is really hard. It also leaves tracks, as any change to a log file is written to, you guessed it, that log file. If a computer system appears to wake up in the night when a national election has stopped counting votes and glitches votes from one candidate to another, guess what? It isn't the standard code. Something changed, and it is discoverable in the log files. If there are no logs, it can usually be found in places where the application is writing to a database. Whatever it was, there are lots of choices. Vote counting software would be highly unlikely to do this during an election. These kind of problems are solved during the quality assurance testing as the first item one might check. Such checks would be run over and over against every conceivable circumstance. So when you hear that there is a glitch in the dark of night and votes got moved around, you can bet it wasn't the lightning strike or a broken water pipe. It was someone changing something. It likely left some tracks. And my experience is there will be a lot of tracks. Competent forensic investigators know just where to look. They are likely to find out that someone changed something and it was not a glitch. Again from Jay Valentine, new election math, it's not 270, it's 26 to 24. James Madison's, Alexander Hamilton's, and certainly Ben Franklin's ghosts are laughing as their genius in founding the Electoral College is likely to be vindicated. We have a generation born to an age where civics is no longer taught. Millions of Americans do not know the difference between a representative and a senator, and too many think the Electoral College is a land-grant school west of Omaha. They are about to get that civics lesson leftist baked out of curricula. The deplorables may not have understood raw political power, leftist manipulation via vote fraud conveniently covered by the media and big tech, but they appear to get it now. The Democrats way overplayed their fraud hand. Scores of bloggers are publishing lists of the dead vote. Statistical algorithms used to identify voter fraud in third world countries applied to this vote show massive fraud. It is only to get uglier every day as more people come forward with fraud testimony, photos of trucks delivering ballots, and records of software that stops in the middle of the night. The mainstream media and big tech almost unanimously deliver the message that Biden won. It is time to come together. Let's move on. That would have worked before, but it is not going to work now. It is not going to work because Donald Trump is not just a president. As others have said, he is our champion. So what's next? Vote fraud on the scale seen this week can hardly be quantified between today and when the Electoral College casts its vote. Lawsuits take time. Discovery is slow. We cannot trust our own Justice Department, the FBI, and intelligence community who have been implicated trying to destroy the current president. There is legal proof and common sense proof. Legal proof may take a bit of time, but the common sense measurement showing massive fraud is off the charts, and it is only 5 days after the election. There's plenty more to come. Biden is at 290 Electoral College votes, with the 20 from Pennsylvania looking more wobbly daily, even as the Pennsylvania legislature has begun hearings. The Supreme Court is pretty much on record that those 20 are far from in the bag. The fights in Wisconsin, Michigan, Georgia, Arizona, Minnesota, and other states go on. Most, perhaps all of the states in question have Republican legislatures, both houses. Many state legislators are the farm team waiting for that shot at Congress or becoming a governor or attorney general. They are politicians, and politicians of any party always have an eye on the next prize. But there is another next step. Let's go there. America was here before. It was Rutherford B. Hayes against Samuel Tilden. Nobody had enough Electoral College votes, so it went to Congress to decide. The history of what happened is interesting. State legislators in 7 or 8 key states, not the court, not the governor, chose the electors. When the deplorables learned that the guy next door who is a state rep or their insurance agent who is a state senator certifies this election fraud, do you think they might just make a call? Republican legislatures are inhabited by many of the same craven political hacks who then move on to Congress. They care about only one thing, getting elected. State legislatures in 6 or 7 or more states run by Republicans have a choice. Certify an election that was clearly fraudulent, certify a different slate of electors who will vote against the popular but fraudulent vote, or just fail to certify. My bet is that several may choose option 3. Even if 1 state or 2 fail to certify, the election goes to Congress. What Republican state legislator wants to see MAGA Nation pillory them with Jack's vote put Joe Biden in office? The thousands of Trump rally attendees in Butler, Pennsylvania, acting in one voice, calling state reps and senators. Just think of how much fun that would be. It is said that all politics is local. It got very local for this presidential election, and there are unlikely to be many state reps or state senators who want to have 71 million MAGA Nation deplorables targeting them. Why not let Congress decide? The legislator can be a hero to his or her constituents while they dodge a certain electoral bullet in the next election. Congress gets to vote, each state 1 vote, Wyoming and California, each 1 vote. Pretty fast, the new election math goes from 270 path to victory to 26 to 24. Trump wins. And it's the upcoming House of Representatives that will make that decision. Another piece from American Thinker by Matt Keener. You know that saying, cheaters never win? It's just that. It's just a saying. Cheaters win all the time. Cheaters sit out part of their NFL season for PEDs and then win our Super Bowl MVP trophies. Cheaters bash record-setting home run numbers. Cheaters make backroom deals and insider trade in business. And cheaters win elections. Cheaters never win. It's one of those truths you hold dear and slowly discover to be patently and utterly false, like life is fair. Life is most certainly anything but fair. Indeed, I've heard it said that fair is where you go for French fries and cotton candy. Yeah. Let's see what the statistician William Briggs has to say before we move on to the always amusing Ibram X. Kendi. Let's see. More anomalies in late vote additions in Pennsylvania. And we're hearing a lot of Benford's Law, which is something I'd never heard of until a few days ago. But it's a question of, it's an indicator of fraud. The numbers of the ballots that typically the number one, starting with number one, it should be high. And if it's not, this indicates fraud, as I say. Ibram X. Kendi, that's not his given name, of course, he tweeted 2 days ago, the term legal vote is as fictionally fraught and functionally racist as the terms illegal alien and race neutral and welfare queen and handouts and super predator and crack baby and personal responsibility and post-racial. Steve Saylor comments, Professor Dr. Ibram X. Kendi is basically 30 years of I've Steve parodies of what the logic of establishment thought will eventually lead to come to life, and funded with $10 million of Jack Dorsey's Twitter bucks. But nobody can say that the money in his racket is bad. Consider this new Help Wanted ad at Archives Gig, Cambridge, Massachusetts, Associate University Librarian for Anti-Racism, Harvard University. Application deadline, December 13th. Salary range, $133,300 to $240,300. I don't know what on earth a associate university librarian for anti-racism, or all of the books deemed to be racist removed from the libraries. That might make scholarship rather difficult. But one can't be too careful. Speaking of scholarship, I understand that Joe Biden's wife, the lovely Jill, that's Dr. Jill Biden to you. Apparently she is a trailblazer because she is going to remain a professor even after Joe Biden becomes president. And I know she's got many degrees. But, I was greatly amused that she teaches at Virginia Community College. I read a story that was extolling her, as an inspiration for this. And yes, she's been a professor since 2009 of English at Northern Virginia Community College. Yes, I wonder what she teaches there. Remedial reading? I think that would be appropriate. Tom Arnold, who I understand used to be an actor and used to be married to Roseanne Barr, sent a tweet. I bet losing sucks, Scott Adams, but good Lord, man, stop whining and coming up with crazy-ass, nonsensical, and stupidly complicated excuses. It's beneath you. Maybe not, but it is beneath 7.8 billion other people. America voted. You lost. Put on your big boy panties and congratulate us. Oh, is that what happened in 2016? Because I remember the opposite of that happening. Scott Adams responded, congratulations, Tom. And in the highly unlikely event that massive fraud is found that reverses the outcome, I will be looking for the same good sportsmanship from you. He retweeted Ned Ryan. Just in case you were wondering, Real Clear Politics has thrown Pennsylvania into the undecided column today. So as of tonight, Joe Biden has 259 electoral votes, or as some would like to say, not president-elect. Yeah. Let's go to KG, Banana Republican KG. Oh, and here's a tweet from Donald J. Trump from 25 minutes ago. Official sources may not have called the race when this was tweeted. Brian Kemp, governor, said Georgia's election result will include legally cast ballots and only legally cast ballots, period. Trump responded, "This is good news. It means I won." But however, Twitter wants to make sure we understand official sources may not have called the race when this was tweeted. No official sources have called the race. We started hearing on Saturday that Biden was president-elect. Why? Because the Associated Press and NBC News had said that he had over 270 electoral votes. They have no official position. Neither does CNN, neither does the New York Times. But I'm looking around to see all of these Biden supporters, whose tweets have warnings that these claims have not been validated by official sources. And no, I'm not seeing them. Josh Kaplan tweeted from an Associated Press story, Oregon's elections director was abruptly fired in a text message by the Secretary of State after he pointed out serious issues with the state's aging and vulnerable technology for running elections. Barr authorizes Department of Justice to probe substantial allegations of voting irregularities despite little evidence of fraud. See, this story is from the AP, Associated Press. It would be, yes, Julie Pace is Washington bureau chief for the Associated Press. It would be very embarrassing for the Associated Press, given that they were one of two of the bodies that anointed Biden as president-elect. Robert Reich tweeted, elections usually end with losing candidates graciously congratulating winners, thereby demonstrating their commitment to the democratic system over the win they fought to achieve. But Trump is incapable of conceding or being gracious, another of his blows to American democracy. Oh, is that what happened in 2016? The Democrats said, hey, Trump, got to hand it to you. We didn't think you had a chance, but you beat us fair and square. No, it was nothing like that. Nothing at all. And of course, how many days did Al Gore get in 2000 to try to overturn the results? In Florida, let's see, J5 Killer tweets, the Biden presidency-elect lasted, 48 hours? Even old sad sack Al Gore did better than that. Real Thomas 777 tweeted, it's fairly telling that Lindsey Graham, McCain's best friend forever, is in attack mode. It's not like his wing of the GOP has any interest in going to bat for the president. The comedy of a coup that the Dems are attempting is too brazen to let slide. Luke Paramo had tweeted, the 10 lawsuits that have already been thrown out because of lack of evidence, or the next 10 that are about to be thrown out because of lack of evidence, LMAO. Thrown out lawsuits. 2 weeks later, sobs uncontrollably. And I see a lot of people seem to be excited that Real Clear Politics has withdrawn their Pennsylvania call. DC's mayor has imposed new COVID-19 restrictions for anyone coming to Washington, D.C. from 42 of the 50 states. Visitors coming to D.C. from a state classified as high risk will be required to take a virus test and receive a negative result within 72 hours before traveling. These are some of the allegations in Detroit, Wayne County, as laid out in one of the newly filed lawsuits. During the election, defendants released untagged, unsecured official ballots from the back door of the Department of Elections. Defendants systematically processed and counted ballots from voters whose name failed to appear in either the qualified voter file or the supplemental sheets. When a voter's name could not be found, the election worker assigned the ballot to a random name already in the qualified voter file to a person who had not voted. Defendants systematically used false information to process absentee ballots, such as using incorrect birthdays. Many times, defendant election officials and workers inserted new names into the QVF after the election. And Jake 5 Killer tweets, holy crap, this is dynamite. If this is true, the Wisconsin election will be invalidated and lots of people will be going to jail. Fox News, which is supposed to be in the tank for Trump, they cut from Trump's press secretary, Kayleigh McEnany. It's just remarkable. And what was it? Someone else on Fox, a blonde, robotic-looking woman, is heard on a live mic saying, what? When there's a question, when the disputed election is brought up. We called it, she said. Oh, yeah, but Fox News doesn't get to decide who the president of the United States is. Jim Kunstler, let's see what he has to say for today. Sure enough, President Donald Trump likes to get out on the golf links, which is where he was on Saturday, a most spectacularly lovely Indian summer day following a harsh election week. Of course, his outing provoked much mirth from a gloating national news media, and by national, I mean united in purpose, as in, look at the big, fat, sad, golfing loser clown we of the anointed woke class just beat like a drum on our noble march back to power. In their righteous raptures of perceived victory, they missed Mr. Trump's message, which was, this is how worried I am about the final election outcome of this election. He's a daisy, our president. The news media strategy here, you understand, is to overcome reality by main force. Reality being that the election Joe Biden rode in on was a garbage barge full of ballot fraud that is on its way to being called out. So the newspapers and cable stations rushed to declare Biden the winner, with several swing states' votes not yet completely counted, and Biden self-ratified the call, while the woke resistance spent the weekend partying in COVID-19 superspreader crowds they had deplored only days earlier. Today's, that's Monday's New York Times, is an especially rich billow of gaslight wafting over the nation, as donated in these headlines. The election is over. The nation's rifts remain. President Trump lost the race, but Republicans know it's still his party, Biden, to restore a White House tradition of presidential pets. It's self-evident, you see, the charismatic Joe Biden is moving into the White House, pets and all, plus Hunter in the Lincoln bedroom. Done and done, signed, sealed, delivered, according to us, the August newspaper of record. Don't even bother complaining, ye pathetic hordes of racist, red-hatted whiners. And by the way, we'll be coming after y'all not-so-fine people, as signaled by Washington Post op-edster Jennifer Rubin. This is what she had to say on November the 6th. Any Republican now promoting rejection of election or calling to not to follow the will of voters or making baseless allegations of fraud should never serve in office, join a corporate board, find a faculty position, or be accepted into polite society. We have a list. Wow, she's the token conservative at the Washington Post. This is positively Stalin-esque. Oh, we have a list. Do you? Yeah, Yagoda had a list. So did Berea. This is what this reminds me of. This was all the news that America got this weekend while the golden golem of greatness, he laid low on the golf links, his own mission to concede the election, pulsating only dimly through all that gaslight. The message drowned out by the popping champagne corks and whooping in Washington's Black Lives Matter square across the street from the soon-to-be fumigated White House. Not a few reality-based observers in the alt media pointed out that it's not the MSN's official duty to pick winners. That's up to elected state legislators certifying the vote. So what's really going on? The Democrats, the resistance, progressives, the left, whatever you want to call them, are much less afraid of being caught for committing election fraud than for getting nailed on a long list of previous and quite serious crimes dating back a decade, including Spygate, Muellergate, Russian collusion, Ukraine whistleblowergate, Uranium One, the Skolkovo technology transfer, the Clinton Foundation's pay-to-play doings, and the recently disclosed influence peddling and money laundering schemes of the Biden family. A little election fraud ain't nothing to that massive reeking landfill of perfidy and sedition, and folks apparently forgot that the election happened just on the eve of whatever investigative results John Durham and company may be ready to drop on the nation, including the afore alluded to Biden family hijinks, of which there is a live case at the Department of Justice. Boy, are they afraid of that. Just saying, in case you put it out of mind in all the excitement. So now we will discover whether they committed targeted election fraud, and then perhaps we'll find out how those other matters turn. Then there were the janky numbers in all of those other states where the Dominion vote tabulation software was used. 130,000 here, 27,000 there, etc. By the way, the company that puts out this Dominion product is partly owned by Democratic Senator Dianne Feinstein's husband, Richard C. Bloom. One of its top executives is Nancy Pelosi's former chief of staff, and the software's development was funded by the Clinton Global Initiative in 2014. I guess they know a good thing when it jumps up and bites them on the lips. I suppose you've also seen rumors about the intelligence community's election meddling software programs, Hammer and Scorecard, allegedly being employed in last week's election, but that is only a rumor so far. Sidney Powell, lawyer to General Michael Flynn, dropped it on the airwaves. And recall that General Flynn was the director of the Defense Intelligence Agency, so there's a chance that he knows about these programs in excruciating detail. There's also reason to believe that General Flynn retains connections to many loyal intel techies who worked with him and are capable of sussing out the situation. Also, by the way, do you suppose that any of this election meddling software was used to ensure Joe Biden's mysterious out-of-nowhere victory in the Super Tuesday primary? So is this over? Is the election a done deal? Perhaps not. A fun weekend was had by all on the Biden side. Stand by in the days ahead. You may see a lot of heads explode as their narrative goes south. If it turns out I'm wrong about all this, I will be the first one to say so around here. John Derbyshire makes a very good point at VDare. He quoted something that he'd written before. On the side of the Democrats are the FBI, the CIA, the federal bureaucracy, academia, Facebook, Twitter, Google, Hollywood, NBC, CBS, ABC, CNN, NPR, the New York Times, every magazine on the shelf, Black Lives Matter, Antifa, 50 million illegal aliens, and now the Chinese Communist Party. If they can't steal an election with that group of supporters, what does it say about their general level of competence? Yeah. They consider themselves to be underdogs. They control almost everything, but no, they are the noble, plucky underdogs, whereas they are very much overdogs. And, I was thinking this weekend, do they actually believe this to be true, even as they're making threats to people associated with Trump? Because if you're the plucky underdog, you're not really in any position to make threats, are you? Stephen Miller was singled out in particular. Apparently, his life is going to be a misery. Bruce Bauer writes in American Greatness, this was the weekend on which the Democratic Party and mainstream media, totally ignoring legitimate concerns about widespread vote fraud in several states, declared Joe Biden the winner of the 2020 presidential election. Almost nobody said, hey, wait. A friend of mine in Manhattan reported that people outside his window were cheering. Even the New York Post, recently demonized another media for its Hunter Biden expose, joined the chorus with a front page headline reading, "It's Joe," and articles referring to him as the president-elect. Ditto Fox News. On Greg Gutfeld's Saturday evening program, a Biden victory was taken for granted by the host and all four guests, except for Tom Shillue, whose reminder that fraud was still under investigation was greeted by the other panelists with something that felt like unease. One regular part of Fox News' Saturday lineup was strangely missing. Only the next morning was it reported that Judge Jeanine Pirro's show had been canceled because she had been planning to discuss the vote fraud. Fox News denied this. On the same evening in Wilmington, Biden and Kamala Harris took part in a public event at which they effectively declared themselves president and vice president-elect. The whole thing was bizarre. Trump hasn't conceded in several states. The numbers are very much in doubt. It's getting hard to keep track of all the fraud claims. And yet the media and the political and cultural establishment generally all bought into it, the idea obviously being to present the whole thing as a fait accompli and thereby make it harder for the Supreme Court to hand the election to Trump. On Sunday, I looked at the Wikipedia page titled President-elect of the United States. It stated, quote, "If the result of an election is unclear or disputed, no person is normally referred to as president-elect until the dispute is resolved," unquote. Next to the sentence was a picture of Joe Biden with the caption, "As of November 7th, 2020, Joe Biden of Delaware is the president-elect of the United States." Although Biden's Wilmington speech was predictably semi-coherent, one point came through clearly enough. "Stop treating our opponents as our enemies," he said. "They're not our enemies, they're Americans." That was rich, coming from a man who, on the rare occasions when he'd spoken up during the past couple of years, had parroted his party's line that Trump's voters are bigots, morons, and, quote, "ugly folks," unquote. A man who'd taken part in the unprecedented treasonous conspiracy to push the Russian collusion lie and thereby unseat an elected president. Biden wasn't alone in pushing this forgive and forget line. On Facebook, my page filled up with memes like this one. "Don't lose friendships today over two men who don't even know your names. It's okay to have different political views and still be okay with each other." That meme and others like it were all posted by Trump supporters, but I had to respectfully dissent. These people, however pure their intentions, were calling for forgiveness without repentance. They were asking their fellow Trump voters to pretend that none of this ugliness had taken place, the years-long coup attempt, the rhetoric about deplorables, and finally, yes, the vote fraud. It was asking Trump voters to believe, if they only affirmed the idea that Biden had won, their longtime Democratic tormentors would shed socialism, corporations would drop globalism, the deep state would quit its partisan perfidy, and journalists would go back to being journalists. As former White House Press Secretary Ari Fleischer tweeted on Saturday night, "Resist, overturn, boycott, surveil, leak, impeach, and now they tell us it's time to heal." Where were they for the last 4 years? As it happened, many on the left, and to me it seemed like most, not just many, weren't exactly extending the hand of friendship anyway. They were gloating. Forget Kathy Griffin's picture with the severed Trump head. Some of the images I saw this weekend on social media put that one in the shade. For 4 years, I bit my tongue while Trump-hating friends and relatives repeated lies about him and savaged those of us who supported him. Even as they ramped it up during the campaign, I hung in there. But this weekend, they dialed their hate up to 11, and I found myself finally unfriending them one after another. There were multitudinous Facebook posts indicating that the Democrats were preparing to take their revenge against Trump supporters. Even before the election, Bill Clinton's Secretary of Labor, Robert Reich, now a professor at UC Berkeley, tweeted, "When this nightmare is over, we need a Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It would erase Trump's lies, comfort those who have been harmed by his hatefulness, and name every official, politician, executive, and media mogul whose greed and cowardice enabled this catastrophe." Naming names. That was on October the 18th. Meanwhile, the Gay and Lesbian Alliance Against Defamation, GLAAD, was touting its Trump Accountability Project, which catalogs the anti-alphabet people statements and actions of President Donald Trump and those in his circle for the benefit of journalists and others. In other words, the lazy partisan hacks of the mainstream media don't even have to make up their own lies about Trump being anti-gay. Trump is, nota bene, the first president to enter office as a supporter of same-sex marriage, the first to hire an openly gay cabinet minister, and the first to spearhead a campaign to rid the world of anti-gay laws, some homophobe. Post-election, this lust to punish the supporters of the election's purported loser, a lust that was never seriously evinced among Trump voters in 2016, went into overdrive. On Friday, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez posted, "Is anyone archiving these Trump sycophants for when they try to downplay or deny their complicity in the future?" Key word, archiving. Then he mentions Jennifer Rubin. Several Trump supporters replied to Rubin's tweet by asking to be put on her list. "Put me down too, Jen." The next morning, Rubin was even more insistent. It's not only that Trump has to lose, but that all his enablers have to lose. she said on Joy Reid's MSNBC show. We have to level them, because if there are survivors, if there are people who weather this storm, they will do it again. That language is awfully close to incitement to violence. But nobody on Reid's panel challenged her. So no, it doesn't quite seem a moment for reconciliation. Turn the other cheek to these people and they'll finish you off and move on to the next chump. No, they've made it clear that if Biden does take office, they'll be even more vicious and arrogant in power than they were out of power, which means that we need to stand up more firmly than ever for freedom and America. I will be back in a couple of seconds here. Okay, and I am back. Truth and reconciliation. That's a good one. Like Trump's administration was like apartheid South Africa, and the hits just keep coming. That they don't believe in reconciliation. It's all nonsense. Here's a story from the U.S. Sun. Mel breaks loose. Melania Trump is counting the minutes until she can divorce Donald after he leaves office. Ex-aide shockingly claims. Oh, but isn't this claim has not been validated by an official source? Has it? I don't think so. So former White House aide and The Apprentice star Omarosa Manigault Newman is certain they will split, reports the Mail on Sunday. She said Melania is counting every minute until he is out of office and she can divorce. If Melania were to try to pull the ultimate humiliation and leave while he's in office, he would find a way to punish her. Yeah. She told the British daytime TV show host Lorraine last month that Melania is repulsed by her husband. And it's not as if this Omarosa woman has, a vendetta going on against Donald Trump. In more reconciliation news, this is from Bloomberg. David Yaffe Bellany and Billy House. Joe Biden won the presidency, promising to bring Americans together, but now his administration is sure to come under pressure from some Democrats to risk exacerbating divisions by investigating and prosecuting Donald Trump. It would be a turnabout of the lock him up chants regularly directed at Biden by Trump supporters at campaign rallies. Although Biden has said that prosecuting a former president would be a very unusual thing and probably not very good for democracy, he also vowed in an NPR interview in August that he wouldn't interfere with the Justice Department's judgment of whether or not they should pursue the prosecution of anyone they think has violated the law. How? With Republicans likely to retain control of the Senate, Biden's nominee for Attorney General will be sure to face tough questioning during confirmation hearings about the new administration's intentions toward Trump, and Republican-led committees could strike back by amping up the investigations of Biden and his family's finances that they'd already begun. It's a real question because on January 20th, Trump will lose his immunity from federal criminal indictment that sitting presidents are granted under Justice Department policy. Prosecutors could revive the investigation into campaign finance violations that resulted in a 3-year sentence for Trump's former lawyer and fixer Michael Cohen, and re-examine the instances of possible obstruction of justice that former special counsel Robert Mueller uncovered in his probe into Russia's 2016 interference. Oh, yes, Robert Mueller and his damp squib of a report. You don't put, gossip in reports of these natures. You determine. You make an estimation on whether it would be viable to charge somebody with specific crimes. Mueller couldn't find that, so he just decided to spray a little black ink around. From U.S. News, lame duck Trump fires defense secretary in surprise move after election loss. Surprise to whom? Certainly not a surprise to me. It had been widely predicted that Mark Esper would get the can, that Gina Haspel at CIA would get the can, and others as well. Trump announced Esper has been terminated in a tweet. common vehicle for consequential announcements during his presidency, and stated that current Senate-approved Deputy Defense Secretary David Norquist would not inherit the position as statute dictates, but rather that Christopher Mueller, director of the National Counterterrorism Center, will serve as acting secretary effective immediately. Mueller, a former Army Special Forces officer, oversees an agency within the Office of the Director of National Intelligence outside the Defense Department. It was not immediately clear why Trump chose to fire the Pentagon chief during the lame duck session and weeks before Joe Biden's inauguration in late July. This is another unsupported claim, isn't it? But no, it just, Joe Biden, President-elect Joe Biden, just hear it. Can you hear it? Can you hear those drum beats? CNN reported over the weekend that Dick Cheney is going to be advising President Joe Biden on foreign policy. So get ready for some expensive, bloody, stupid new wars. I read on Recode, Theodore Schleifer, the former CEO of Google, has applied to become a citizen of Cyprus. Eric Schmidt is effectively buying a passport that he can use to enter the European Union. Does anyone else find this very strange? Is he looking to escape? Is there something about him about to be reported? Yeah. Looking at myself here in the monitor, my skin isn't really this color. Hang on a second. Does that make it better or worse? I don't know. Doesn't seem to make much difference. You look like you're getting a lot of vitamin D. Actually, I am getting a lot of vitamin D, but as I pointed out, my skin isn't really this color. He seems kind of perverse, but that's with the market. Everything is about cash levels, positioning, etc., says Alex Delarge. Goose says, I'm sure the Christians of Cyprus will be thrilled to receive him. Yeah, I think that Trump wanted to send him. Oh, he's furious with Esper because Esper said that, no, you can't send federal troops to put down insurrection in the street. Rustin Shackelford says Cocaine Mitch got what he wanted. The party can go back to being a shadow of the left while selling out the American worker. But as we've seen, McConnell is standing with Trump, and Moscow Mitch was trending today. See, the left isn't content to win. The enemy must be destroyed. The wounded must be shot. What was the word that Jennifer Rubin used? Crushed or whatever? I heard Slovenia isn't recognizing Biden. If that's true, I really don't think Melania wants to abandon her husband. Are we supposed to believe that Melania Trump would be discussing the state of her marriage and her sex life with Omarosa? Are we really expected to believe that? Do we get a lot of information about Melania, about anything? Again, that's the kind of a first lady that I like to see, one who is not constantly fighting to be in the headlines. But of course, if Professor Dr. Jill becomes a first lady, it's just going to be all Jill all the time. De says they cheated by 30 million votes. This is so funny. Adam says Amy Goodman likes to refer to that silly list of Trump's crimes against the alphabet people. I don't know what that would be. Oh, no transsexuals in the armed forces. Is that it? Anrun, who is more deranged, Rubin or Olbermann? Olbermann seems to be more visibly deranged, but Jennifer Rubin speaks in a way that one associates with commissars. Okay. Algeis says, The market never adjusted for what I'm assuming is probably 11 to 12 digits worth of wealth lost from the shutdown. I'm a newbie value investor, but to my knowledge, that's not how things work. Goose says, I really hope he goes forward with Trump TV and grabs Tucker and others. Well, yeah, that's what, that was the voter suppression story of Matt Drudge. Oh, yes, he's already decided that he's going to lose the election. He's going to start his own TV station, and, Murdoch welcomes the competition. Alex Large says, perhaps once Trump is out of office and himself banned from Twitter in 2021, he'll have more time to closely monitor the situation. Tricky Woo says, people have always died in the thousands from the flu. It's the perfect, payoff. Weaponized sniffles has destroyed the entire world's economy. Well, Trump was the candidate of back to normal, and the United States economy has made, certainly in terms of jobs, jobless claims, GDP growth, has recovered quite nicely, as opposed to, say, the United Kingdom, which is heading for absolute disaster. Distinguished Russiagate disciple Michael McFaul upset that Putin hasn't congratulated Biden for a presumed election win. Oh, dear. Apparently tossing aside years of hysteria about the Kremlin meddling in U.S. internal affairs. This is from RT, which, of course, is owned by the Russian government. Of course, the CBC, Canadian Broadcasting Corporation, is owned by the Canadian government. In fact, our media in Canada was bought off with $600 million from the Trudeau government. McFaul, who became one of the most outspoken proponents of the debunked theory that Moscow colluded with the Trump campaign in 2016, expressed his disappointment on Twitter that Russian President Putin has yet to offer his congratulations to the Democratic nominee, who declared himself president-elect on Saturday. Has Putin joined the chorus of world leaders in congratulating Biden yet? I haven't seen the statement. Do post if it's out. Over the past 4 years, McFaul has rarely passed up an opportunity to suggest that Moscow is somehow exerting shadowy influence over Washington. Now he's apparently disappointed that the Kremlin hasn't chosen sides in a contested election. Several states are still counting votes, and recounts and lawsuits brought by the Trump campaign could make declaring a clear victor in the contest premature. The first world leader was the Prime Minister of Fiji to offer congratulations, expressing hope that Biden would help the world navigate a climate emergency. Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau said he was looking forward to working with Biden, while UK leader Boris Johnson said he was eager to begin cooperation with the Democrats' new administration. Although it's true that Putin has yet to recognize Biden's projected win, he's not alone. Chinese President Xi Jinping has said nothing on the subject, along with President Erdogan of Turkey. In fact, some world leaders have even hinted that they don't recognize Biden's victory. Slovenian Prime Minister Janez Janša on Wednesday declared Trump the victor, and then issued a follow-up statement insisting that the election should not be called until the courts rule on the matter. He wasn't the only world leader to express unwillingness to recognize a winner in the contest. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador said on Saturday that he wanted to wait for legal challenges to finish before assuming a clear victor. Similarly, Polish President Andrzej Duda congratulated Biden for running a successful presidential campaign, adding that his nation was waiting to see who would be declared the official president-elect by the Electoral College. So Justin Trudeau and Boris Johnson, I mean, they must be really confident that the fix is in, because if Trump turns this around, I don't think he's going to be very happy with either of those men. And of course, he has crossed swords with Justin Trudeau in the past, and Trudeau did not come off well. Let's talk about COVID-19, which is it over now? Because apparently this was Trump's disease, and now that Biden is president-elect, it's just going to go away now. Is that what's going to happen? Peter Hitchens has a very angry column on Sunday, in the Mail on Sunday. Normally, I would go this morning to a small village war memorial and stand in the cold November air while we prayed a little, saying, "Oh God, our help in ages past." and observed the usual silence between bugle calls. But a few weeks ago, I was told that this was impossible. Apparently, we would be all too close together or something. So the event was to be switched to a nearby cemetery where we could all stand a long way from each other. There will be white crosses painted on the grass to indicate where people should stand to ensure social distancing. Masks are not compulsory in this scenario, but their use would be appreciated, said the parish circular. And of course, we were supposed to leave our names and addresses in case, in the wind and the cold, as we avoided each other, we somehow contracted or passed on COVID. How, I wonder, would those we were commemorating have viewed these pathetic precautions in the spirit of subservience to the state, constantly advised by church leaders, which they express? I was getting ready to endure this parody, wondering if it would make me laugh out loud or lose my temper or both. But then Johnson and Hancock, our prison governor and chief warder, once again made normal life illegal. The feeble pseudo-ceremony was canceled, as are all other religious services. Quite a few people in the churches and in politics are beginning too late to seethe about this repression of an important part of national life. Any actual war veteran, should he take part in a remembrance service inside, could be fined on the spot by an official. But the more we obey Hancock and his dubiously lawful decrees, the more he thinks he can boss us around. It is because the churches took the knee to him in March that he now feels he can kick them in the face. So it is good to mark that last week we began once again to have an opposition in this country. More public voices are being raised against this unjustified folly out of all proportion to the hugely exaggerated risk. Back in March, as I know very well, anyone who spoke up against this was treated more or less as an outcast apostle of evil, callous and selfish, not to be listened to. Now a significant number of MPs are ready to vote against it. More and more the media are examining it as severely as they should have done from the start, although the BBC remains mostly a shameful propaganda organ of Downing Street. I think we have reached the end of the beginning. And one day we may yet liberate ourselves from these sinister clowns. When we do, there will be much to forgive. But I am not sure I will ever be able to forgive the people who made it a crime to sing "O God, Our Help in Ages Past" at an English village war memorial. He further writes, the invention of hate crime has turned this into a society where the police patrol our minds and opinions. When exactly did we start to slither down such a steep and frightening slope? Whose fault is it? It will end with something very much like the East German Stasi, who were nothing as nice as their portrayal in the film The Lives of Others. Now, tucked away on page 481 of a 544-page consultation document from the highly influential Law Commission is a suggestion that what we say in our own homes should in future be prosecuted. It is many years since our homes have been our castles, but this is a totalitarian idea, especially now that almost anything can be recorded. You might think that you never say anything at home that could get you into trouble, but the rapidly tightening speech codes of our society grow narrower every day. Nobody speaks as freely now as they did 20 years ago. Are you sure that your opinions, once normal, will not one day become a crime? I expect that expressing doubts about the carbon dioxide explanation of global warming will become a criminal offense in my lifetime. And if you doubt it, look around you. The other really nasty thing about this, apart from the opportunities for blackmail, is that your children could end up accidentally denouncing you by a chance remark at school, picked up by a zealot teacher and reported to the authorities. I would once have urged you to campaign against this, but with the sort of government we now have, I say prepare for it to happen. Boris Johnson has turned out to be more unfit for purpose than Theresa May was, and I have to say, despite my low opinion of Boris, I didn't really see that coming. The Mail, which is I suppose it's replaced the Telegraph as the organ of conservative Britain. They had an editorial 2 days ago. If lockdown goes on one day beyond December the 2nd, it's curtains for Boris, the Tories, and for Britain. Is Boris Johnson going to listen to that? Because if the Conservatives lose the Daily Mail reader, they are clearly finished. And again from the Daily Mail, We must not slacken. Boris Johnson warns Britons to stick to the rules to get through second wave as he hails COVID vaccine breakthrough that could get life back to normal by spring, and reveals that the United Kingdom has ordered enough for a third of the population. Pfizer has announced really impressive progress on vaccine and will soon seek approval from regulators. UK has ordered 40 million doses, enough to cover 20 million people, with 10 million due before Christmas. Of the 94 people who became infected in the huge study, over 90% did not receive the real vaccine. Pfizer chief hailed light at the end of the tunnel, while the UK government experts said country back to normal by spring. Boris Johnson has warned that the UK cannot rely on this as a solution and slacken our resolve to lock down. Yeah. Is the lockdown ever going to end? I mean, he seems to be suggesting that it is going to go beyond December the 2nd and that the government of the United Kingdom is going to cancel Christmas. They canceled Remembrance Sunday. Now they're going to cancel Christmas. One person who is not happy about a vaccine is the Love Gov, dishing it 24/7, Andrew Cuomo of New York State. This is I don't know that this man is so vile that I suppose I shouldn't be surprised. This is from Jordan Davidson at The Federalist. New York Governor Andrew Cuomo publicly rejected the Trump administration's efforts to move forward implementing a COVID-19 vaccine, vowing to work with other governors to stop its distribution before it does damage. The Trump administration is rolling out the vaccination plan, and I believe it's flawed, Cuomo said. I believe that it learns nothing from the past. You have 2 months, and we can't let this vaccination plan go forward the way Trump administration is designing it, because Biden can't undo it. And 2 months later, we'll be in the midst of it. Cuomo's reaction comes shortly after the early data from Pfizer, a private drug-making company, in conjunction with BioNTech, which shows that its COVID-19 vaccine appears to be more than 90% effective in preventing the virus. Tom Elliott tweeted, Cuomo says it's bad news. Pfizer's COVID vaccine came during the Trump administration, says he's going to work with other governors to stop distribution before it does damage. And he was speaking about this on ABC News with George Stephanopoulos, who I understand has put his hat in the ring to be the new host of Jeopardy after Alex Trebek's death. Instead of relying on the Trump administration, who oversaw the development of this vaccine to distribute it properly, Cuomo, who received help from the federal government early on in the pandemic, believes that former Vice President Joe Biden will do a better job. When you deny a problem the way Trump did, you can never solve it, and that's true in life, he said. The Trump administration denied COVID, so they were never ready for it. There was no mobilization of the government, and they're still doing the same thing. This is an outright lie. As the story points out, Cuomo asked for a number of things from Trump. Trump delivered them, including a hospital ship, which was never needed, and Cuomo publicly thanked Trump for this. I'm sure the Biden administration is going to address that, Cuomo added. I think his first step is saying, let's focus on the science. Let's depoliticize testing data. Listening to the science is the exact opposite of Trump. The news of a vaccine, Cuomo said, is good and bad, because while he claims that a vaccine will be helpful, he also says that the implementation of a vaccine will be similar to the United States testing efforts, where people were just scrambling. He also expressed concern about the vaccine being developed by private providers, excluding certain communities from obtaining it. They're basically going to have the private providers do it, and that's going to leave out all sorts of communities that were left out the first time when COVID ravaged them. What is he talking? Is COVID-19 is a racist disease? They're going to take this vaccine and they're going to go through the private mechanism, through hospitals and through drug market chains, etc., he added. That's going to be slow, and that's going to bypass the communities that we call healthcare deserts. If you don't have a Rite Aid or CVS, then you're in trouble. Well, perhaps San Francisco might be in trouble because the drugstores are leaving because there's effectively no law against shoplifting. in California anymore. I can't say that, when I think of this virus, it has obviously been rushed to delivery, which is worrisome. But these are the same people who were saying, virus, virus, virus. Why don't we have a virus? We need a virus. Everything is going to be messed up until we have a virus. Well, now there is a virus, and it's made by Pfizer, which is a name that everyone recognizes. No, we can't do it. We can't do it when Trump's president, because I guess he would get credit because he was calling on the drug companies to come up with a vaccine, and now apparently there's one ready to go. Toby Young at Lockdown Skeptics, whistleblower, 37% of NHS staff are absent due to COVID-19 in Yorkshire and the Northeast. Full of interesting data. This has to be due to false positives. No way can over 1/3 of staff all have COVID, but the figure is even higher in the Midlands, 40%. And this confirms my analysis, Toby Young writes, published last Wednesday, of why the Quad took the decision to place England under a second lockdown, in spite of knowing that COVID hospital admissions were unlikely to exceed those during the peak of the first wave, when no NHS trust anywhere in the country was overwhelmed. As I said then, they were just worried about certain hotspots, especially those cities in Yorkshire and the Northeast. And the reason for their anxiety was because NHS England's critical care capacity in those areas is now lower than it was in March, April. Why? Because hospital trusts have been ordered to admit non-COVID patients, unlike during the first wave, and because intensive care units are understaffed. A doctor friend of his writes, on November 4th, the British Parliament voted to enforce a lockdown of the population in order to prevent the NHS from being overwhelmed with COVID-19 admissions. In support of the government, Professor Whitty and Sir Patrick Vallance provided a graphs of dubious provenance, suggesting catastrophic consequences if lockdown was not reintroduced. Those projections subsequently turned out to be grossly inaccurate. Sir Simon Stevens, the head of the NHS in England, then presented figures suggesting that the NHS was in imminent danger of collapse from COVID pressures in the coming weeks. He stated that the number of COVID patients in some hospitals was greater than the number in the spring, and then in total, there were enough COVID patients in England to fill 22 hospitals. Conservative MPs complained that the information they had been provided with was insufficiently detailed to allow them to make an informed decision on this matter, and the motion was duly carried. And yes, these numbers were cooked, and they're already calling this the dodgy dossier. Yes. Conservative MP David Mueller in yesterday's Mail on Sunday says that the dossier Boris presented to the public last Saturday was so dodgy, even Tony Blair wouldn't have touched it. The dodgy dossier, of course, refers to this ridiculous claims that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction, and that 45 minutes, in the span of 45 minutes, he could start leveling British cities. And so, of course, invasion was absolutely necessary. There was a sizable anti-lockdown protest in Manchester yesterday, resulting in 4 arrests. Hundreds of people, the Manchester Evening News reports, gathered in Piccadilly Gardens in central Manchester today to protest against the national lockdown. There appeared to be little social distancing, and none of the protesters appeared to be wearing masks. Condemning the protest on Sunday evening, Greater Manchester Police said they estimated 600 were in attendance, and said police officers responding to the incident were left injured. They also said a large number of people had traveled to Manchester from the protest, including one group who came via coach from Cumbria. Assistant Chief Constable Mabs Hussain, yes, the Assistant Chief Constable of Manchester is called Mabs Hussain. He said, "I would like to use this opportunity to publicly condemn this gathering. Both the organizers and attendees were irresponsible, increasing demand on police, who are also responding to calls regarding serious incidents and people who are in immediate danger across Greater Manchester. Under the Anti-Social Behavior Crime and Policing Act of 2014, officers authorized a Section 34 dispersal order They also arrested 4 people on suspicion of public order offenses and issued 24 200-pound fixed penalty notices. Inquiries are ongoing to also issue an FBN to the organizer. He added, whilst reporting to this gathering, a number of officers were injured. This is unacceptable behavior towards officers who are simply doing their job and protecting people. Investigators will now work to identify those responsible and ensure they face justice. Yes, for the crime of going outside. And finally, according to today's Mail, Boris is furious about having been strong-armed into agreeing into a second lockdown after being shown dodgy data. I've said this about Boris Johnson for some months. When he decided to go with Professor Neil Ferguson of Imperial College, he has a big staff, and he could have got a couple of people, even one person. What do we know about this Neil Ferguson character? Has he made predictions before? Have his predictions panned out? And Boris would have learned that Neil Ferguson has a long history of disastrously wrong predictions, so that it would be a mistake. It would be a mistake to take his advice seriously. But I don't know. Perhaps Boris is simply. I don't think he's up to the job of being prime minister. He's just. And of course, he seems to be allergic to a hairbrush or comb. Jody Cantor of the New York Times has a video. The north end of Prospect Park has turned into a dance party, and every few minutes, screams of joy just roll across the park like a wave at a baseball game. Gary Weiss commented, so many examples of the de Blasio-Cuomo double standard on mass gatherings, so little media recognition that it is a double standard, one for Orthodox Jews, the other, no enforcement, no scolding for anyone else. This joyous tweet is from a New York Times reporter, Natch. Let's go to the chat. Mark Collett's Twitter account has been suspended. Goose says the entire English language has been weaponized for a century and a half. Tricky Woo, Masketeers wear the mask to hide their shame. Brent Studemeyer says, whoa, why was D.B. Cooper's message about the police involved in election fraud just retracted? I don't know. I'll have to look into this. Yes, Englishman Mabs Hussein of Manchester, England. Racism is weaponized English, says a Tricky Woo. Well, yeah, it can, apparently to believe in responsibility is racist, according to Ibram X. Kendi, who is the high priest of anti-racism. Goose says they have to get us focused on the black oppression in the West so no one pays attention to what they're actually doing to blacks in Africa. Halper says, hope we won't need to get shot up with a secret state sauce for a permit to leave the house. Well, yes, that may well be coming. YT says, healthcare deserts. Are these the ones where people who don't take care of themselves at all get healthcare for free? Contracu says, I once asked why we sing in church and was given the curt reply of, it pleases the Lord. Now, decades later, the rabid calls to ban religious singing have me thinking a lot about that moment. De Berea says they can go ahead and vaccinate the whole black community ahead of me. Peter Levy says, my prediction is crypto assumes the historical role of gold. Yes, well, we're going to be hearing a lot about racism if Biden does become president. He's got something to prove with black voters who miraculously resuscitated his campaign in South Carolina. He is so disgusting, KMG, vile to the core. he's got this sort of, he's talking to George Stephanopoulos, and he's got this slight smile on his lips. Yeah. So can't have a vaccine in the United States because it might make Trump look good. Trump said there was going to be a virus soon, and they all laughed at him, and now we have the announcement of a vaccine, rather. Alex Berenson. He writes about what appears to be ballot harvesting in the state of Georgia, which is illegal under Georgia law. This term ballot harvesting, I first heard it, 2 years ago. And I thought, this sounds like a right-wing troll. It sounds like satire, ballot harvesting. Then I found out that's an actual phrase, and it is legal in the state of California and some other states, and I could scarcely believe it. It's just, what I always say about postal voting, we bring the fraud to you. Nate Silver, I guess, is not very happy. He writes, estimates of the polling error in swing states, making educated guesses about what the final numbers will look in states that aren't done counting yet. Berenson responds, this is, how do I put this delicately, bullshit. Most of the states with the smaller errors were rarely surveyed, Colorado, Virginia, New Mexico. The errors were largest in the most important, heavily surveyed states, the opposite of what a fair and accurate polling process would have produced. Further, many major nonpartisan national polls had a Joe Biden up 10%, plus 10 in the days, not weeks, days before the election. CNBC, NBC, Quinnipiac poll, and The Economist, to name just four. It was only the supposedly GOP-leaning polls that polled the average anywhere near reasonable. I used to think Nate Silver was essentially honest, even if he leaned Democratic. I'm surprised he's defending the indefensible here. The polls were way off, so far off that no one is going to trust them for a long time. Laurie Garrett had tweeted, advocates for a herd immunity approach to COVID-19 control will have to reckon with this. The CDC says 1 out of every 11 COVID survivors require ongoing medical care that includes rehospitalization. One way this is so much worse than the flu. Berenson responds, many people have pointed out already readmissions for influenza are significantly higher than this. The flip side is that because SARS-CoV-2 overwhelmingly attacks people who are already sick, readmissions for circulatory or digestive problems might be expected in any case. That is, I would love to see a case series of people admitted for COVID that looks at their hospital admissions in the year before they received the diagnosis. Bourla on CNBC, I believe this is most likely the most significant medical advance in the last 100 years, Berenson comments, and this from the company that gave us Viagra. Yes. So what am I going to talk about next? Oh, I'm going to be talking about Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan Mertz. How long is he going to be a prince for? He decided to go public with a spat with a Buckingham Palace regarding Remembrance Sunday. So here we have Prince Harry and his wife, Meghan Mertz, and they are using their titles to make money, which is not done. They have fled the United Kingdom, and now live in a big house in California. And the website called Harry Markle reports, nothing surprises us when it comes to the sycophantic Sussexes, and it was anticipated that they would pull some kind of stunt on Remembrance Sunday, which in the UK is a day where everyone stops. Once the news of Harry's request for a wreath to be laid on his behalf at the cenotaph was denied, everyone expected something from them, but the reality of it when it happened was raw and repulsive. I was already in the middle of an article when the story was released, so I've had to heavily edit the article. I wasn't going to post anything on my Facebook page until midnight as a mark of respect, but I could sense the anger already and decided to post it, but held off writing about it until the next day. The public response was an abhorrent disgust as I watched the comments pour in. From the Telegraph, royal courtiers refuse Prince Harry's request to lay Remembrance Sunday wreath on his behalf. Yes, this word snowflakes used. From the Daily Mail, Meghan Mertz and Prince Harry aren't selling when on the cover of magazines, despite beautiful pictures amid popularity plummet, Majesty editor-in-chief claims. Last week, Hello was the only magazine that featured them on the cover, and it didn't sell. Ingrid Seward admitted that the duo don't sell magazines, so they have stopped using them on the cover. That isn't news. In fact, MM never sold magazines. She was shoved on the front of the weekly gossip magazines when she was rumored to be dating Harry, but no one was ever interested. I remember the wedding specials were still on the shelves at the bottom a year later. This week in the UK, no magazines had neither of them on the cover because they don't sell and no one is interested in them. On November 6th, the movement called Social Media Kindness Day posted a tweet with a message of support from Meghan Mertz. It appeared to have been deleted the same day as the account went private in a bid to control the responses, no doubt, and then realized the only way to do that was to delete the post. All I can do is shake my head at this because it is ludicrous. They are asking people to pledge to be kind on social media for a day. Why not try being decent human beings all the time instead? Think about it. If you support this and pledge, you are effectively saying you aren't a nice person and that you are a troll on social media. I'm a direct person, but that doesn't make me mean. And just because I disagree with someone or criticize something doesn't make me mean either. That's called expressing an opinion. But in the mind of a snowflake, that can be interpreted as unkind, it seems. Grow a backbone. And so Meghan Mertz is going to be the public face of kindness on the internet. Well, she has to get to the front of every parade, it seems. There's no end to people insisting that social media is toxic and then people need to change their behavior. Chris Shipp had tweeted, Prince Harry and Meghan have marked Remembrance Sunday by visiting the Los Angeles National Cemetery today. The Duke and Duchess of Sussex wanted to personally recognize the day in their own way. This was a planned photo opportunity that was in such poor taste that there are no words to describe what a despicable and low act this was. We had expected it, but the reality of it was made worse by the fake sad faces while they clutched hands. The usual reporters jumped on the story, and the same old sugars made the same brainless comments. I read some of them to see how they could defend this, and some had to stoop to slating Edward as a useless member of the royal family, to the utterly ridiculous where a DM comment said that if it hadn't been for Harry's bravery, we'd all be speaking Talibanese. Yes, they are that stupid. Was the photo shoot and staged visit in retaliation for the rejection, or would they have gone ahead and done it in any case? As many Americans have said, they should have waited until November the 11th, Veterans Day, which is a public holiday. However, they would not have been able to have their private photo shoot. Was this done in a bid to cling to the Queen's Commonwealth Trust rolls that are being reviewed? Many in the UK don't support them being involved, and those in the Commonwealth are equally opposed because they serve no purpose and are no longer working members of the royal family. There are claims that the cemetery was closed for them just for the photo shoot, and it appears that it was closed over the weekend, or maybe just the office, even though it is supposed to be open 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. daily. The cemetery has been used for filming, and permits are required, and an application must be made for photo shoots. So this stunt was planned well in advance, it seems. Even if they filmed at the weekend, there must have been staff present to assist with the wreaths. Other claims are that a film crew accompanied them, and I would not put that past them, hence why Meghan Mertz was dressed in a new outfit she could promote. The claim is that the duo wanted to recognize the day in their own way, so why did they pay for a photographer and then get their PR to release the story? Why did they so obviously pose for photos? Why not simply do it privately and avoid any criticism? The fact that it was too good an opportunity to miss for worldwide attention, and it was a last-ditch attempt to get veterans and the military to back up Harry in his ailing bid to keep some of his titles. That is how they chose to do things their own way, and that was by publicly promoting their appearance. The fact is that the duo didn't have to release public images of them at the Los Angeles National Cemetery, but they planned to and chose to do it with a purpose in mind. When you think they can't sink any lower, the shameless Sussexes find a way. There is no bandwagon they will not jump on, and there is no photo opportunity they will not take advantage of. Shame on them for using war heroes to try and promote their public profiles. At the start of the year, they claimed they had to flee the UK because they wanted a life of privacy. Staging a photo shoot and closing a cemetery to do it, then releasing the story to the media, is the very opposite of living a private life. They lied. They should not be enabled any further. And that is from the Harry Markle website. It seems that whatever goodwill that the British people had for Meghan Mertz has pretty much evaporated, and she has dragged Harry down with her. Let's go back to the chat here. Peter Levy says, at least he got Brexit done. Well, it's not done, not quite yet. The negotiations aren't going very well with Europe. Just checked racism's levels in bloodstream, says Peter Levy. Well, of course, I've mentioned Peter Simple and the Prejudometer, which measures racial prejudice in Prejudons, which are the internationally accepted unit of racism. Let's see. What's the latest from the chat here. Harry's being blackmailed, says Tricky Woo. DB Cooper says, what happened to Harry? He used to be my favorite red-headed bastard royal. Yeah. I would, he had a wild youth. And, he's complaining about privacy, the lack of privacy. When you make a habit of stumbling drunk out of nightclubs at 2 a.m, and you're Prince Royal, this is going to be in the newspapers. I mean, considering, the fabulous places that he had access to, he always got loaded in one of them. YT says, is Build Back Better some kind of code for something? It's just so obviously bad and nonsensical for a presidential campaign. It gets better, okay, which is also a slogan. Justin Trudeau has adopted this as an official Canadian slogan, that Canada is going to build back better after COVID-19. What they've already announced, high-speed internet for 98% of the country. I don't really know how this is building back better. Chad Chadson says, Jussie Smollett just announced that he was attacked by 2 men wearing Build Back Better hats who threw prune juice in his face and yelled, this is Trump country, or some variation on that. Biden would be the most corrupt and inarticulate president in American history, says Mike F. LBJ was plenty corrupt, but I don't recall him selling out the United States to foreign countries. His name is not Prince Harry, it's just Harry, says Head McNeck. My understanding is that he is still a prince, and there seems to be other people claiming that he cannot be stripped of that title. I've long believed that this marriage is not going to last very long, that Meghan Mertz is going to squeeze as much notoriety and money as she can get out of it. And then she is going to dump Harry while she is still under 40, when she can go, searching for other men. And what happens then? Does Harry come back to England with his tail between his legs? Her name isn't Mert, says Beaky Teller. Yes, I know that. But I just find it funny to say it. It's that simple. Yes. The story in Canada, US-based Whole Foods Market says poppies aren't allowed under its recently updated uniform policy, which affects employees at its 14 locations across Canada. There was a claim made in here having to do with pins, okay? That why would Whole Foods ban? Why would they ban them? Lucifero, he's an employment lawyer with the firm Samfru Tumarkin, said that Whole Foods might have health and safety reasons for not allowing employees to wear a poppy because the poppies are pins with needles. There might be a health and safety risk there. How old do you have to be in order to, put on a poppy or take one off without stabbing yourself? I should have thought that, first graders would probably have that down. Canadian military. What purpose does the Canadian military serve? That's an open question. But apparently it has found a new purpose. David Pugliese writes in the Ottawa Citizen, Canadian military wants to establish new organization to use propaganda, other techniques to influence Canadians. The plan comes on the heels of the Canadian Forces spending more than $1 million to train public affairs officers on behavioral modification techniques of the same sort used by the parent firm of Cambridge Analytica, as well as a controversial and bizarre propaganda training mission in which the military forged letters from the Nova Scotia government to warn the public that wolves were wandering in the province. The new Defense Strategic Communication Group will advance national interest by using defense activities to influence the attitudes, beliefs, and behaviors of audiences, according to the document dated October 2020. Target audiences for such an initiative would be the Canadian public, as well as foreign populations in countries where military forces are sent. The document is the end result of what the Chief of the Defense Staff, General John Vance, has called the weaponization of the military's public affair branch. The document is in draft form, but work is already underway on some aspects of the plan, and some techniques have been tested on the Canadian public. But the Office of Defense Minister Harjit Sajjan said Sunday that the plan, at least for now, is not authorized to proceed. He has raised concerns about some of the activities related to such influence and propaganda operations. No such plan has been approved, nor will it be, said Florian Bonneville, Sajjan's press secretary. But a series of town halls were already conducted last week for a number of military personnel on the strategies contained in the draft plan. The report quotes Brigadier General Jay Jansen, Director General Military Public Affairs, who stated the motto, "Who dares wins," is as applicable to strategic communication as it is to warfare. The initiative also proposes the creation of a new research capability established to analyze and collect information from the social media accounts of Canadians, non-governmental organization, industry, and the news media. The Canadian Forces have already tested that capability earlier this year. This newspaper reported that a team assigned to a Canadian military intelligence unit monitored and collected information from people's social media accounts in Ontario, claiming such data mining was needed to help troops who were to work in long-term care homes during the coronavirus pandemic. So the Canadian military is going to be spying on us, and they're going to weaponize public affairs. And you know how that works. That Canada is a racist country, that it was founded in racism, etc., etc., etc. Why wasn't the Chief of the Defense Staff sacked immediately after this was after this was revealed, that despite the fact that our military is practically useless, it costs a lot of money. And now we find out that the Canadian military is going to regard Canadians as the enemy. Absolutely remarkable. So what is coming up on the show this week? On Theater Thursday, on November 12th, I'm going to be discussing Robert Zemeckis' Who Framed Roger Rabbit. On November 19th, I will be discussing Mervyn LeRoy's from 1932, I Am a Fugitive from a Chain Gang. And then another American classic on November 26th, Meet John Doe from Frank Capra in 1941. December 3rd, Terry Gilliam's Brazil. And on December the 10th, Michael Mann's Manhunter. And coming up on the book club this week is Stanley Kubrick, American filmmaker, by David Mittich. It's really it's quite well written. And it's full of information, much of which I did not know. I've only spotted one error so far. Hartman is not a lieutenant in Full Metal Jacket. He is a sergeant. But I've very much enjoying this. So, give an example of Stanley Kubrick had a sense of humor. Many people will say, that he was a cold, distant man. He wasn't, actually. But my favorite Kubrick joke is repeated in the book. Apparently, it's a true story. That Kubrick, for many years, wanted to make a movie about the Holocaust. And it was going to be called Aryan Papers, and it was going to be based on a Louis Begley novel. And he tried to get Michael Herr involved in writing the screenplay, and Michael Herr didn't want to do it. And he told Stanley Kubrick, the book that I do not want to read right now is one that Kubrick had sent him, Raoul Hilberg's The Destruction of the European Jews. He said, right now, I do not want to be reading The Destruction of the European Jews. And Kubrick responded, no, Michael, the book you do not want to read right now is The Destruction of the European Jews, Part 2. So that is the show for tonight. Best Theater Thursday ever? Okay, says Head McNeck. We'll see. Emmett Kelly's Earth says, would you consider reviewing Ronald Knox's Enthusiasm? I would consider it, but the problem is that I'm not a canonist or anything like that. This is it's a long, detailed book about the subject of religious enthusiasm, which I have read. I don't know that I would be the best person to discuss it, although I'll think it over. So I'll be back on the air tomorrow at 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern. If you like the show or any part of it, I would appreciate it if you click on the like button and subscribe to my YouTube channel if you have not already done so. If you would like to donate to this live stream, my PayPal account is kevin_grace@hotmail.com. Once again, kevin_grace@hotmail.com. If you're Canadian, you can send me money directly via Interac at kevingrace@shaw.ca. And I shall leave you with this. In these days of social atomization and civilizational collapse, I do dearly wish that you, my dear viewers and listeners, manage to forge genuine human connection to ease the burden. Good night.